Conscious realities that are evaluated with world comprehension are not the essence knowledge of the being. These are appearances of the matter states, according to the necessities of the being's embodiments in crude matter, that display various forms, within the duty, earthly craving duality. These realities do not necessarily follow the same sequence in everybody, they line up according to necessities and needs. And knowledge of comparison to be collected from the events that will arise, as a result of the collision of these opposite components, will increase the values of the being's essence knowledge, and these values will reflect to the spirit as its degree of evolution, within comprehension formations. This situation briefly indicates the gist of the states of the ever-changing realities in the world at the conscience mechanism, and of the roles of all these mechanisms that enrich the essence knowledge, and finally, of the services the being renders for the evolution of the spirit. Likewise, these realities operate the conscience mechanism, as on the one hand they increase essence knowledge, and on the other hand they can shift towards the higher realities, by taking strength and speed from essence knowledge. That is, as the realities connected to the brain enrich the complexity of subtle matter combinations, belonging to the comprehension in the essence being, illumined lights reflected to the brain from the essence being convey the equilibria of conscience to the higher levels, as well. Thus, as essence knowledge increases, tugs of conscience on the path of knowledge of duty increase the level of earthly cravings as well. And there comes a moment when the distance between duty and earthly cravings shortens, close to the plan of duty. And it becomes easier for comprehension to orientate to the duty front. And when the plan of duty is reached, from that moment onwards, conscience duality is no more. Instead, another duality of evolution, that of a different quality, and which advances with deeds of great duty begins. And this duality follows the being up to the unitary. Mankind, which constitutes the most intense moments of this tug, especially at the middle stages of humanity, lives continuously in shifts of ease and uneasiness. These states correspond to the equilibrium and imbalanced states of the conscience components that emerge distinctly. The ease puts the man into a state of satisfaction, in accordance with his comprehension. So he sees himself in resolved problems. However, at the moment the equilibrium line of conscience starts to be disturbed at higher or lower levels, in accordance with the necessities and emerging needs of the essence being, he is annoyed. The feeling of his old reality is about to collapse in the face of a new reality that irritates him. This suffering increases with the degree of equilibrium's disruption. This situation takes on various contents and forms, according to each cycle and level. Sometimes, especially at the less advanced stages, it manifests as real pangs of conscience. These types of pangs are seen more at equilibria's shifting downwards. In the advanced developmental stages of being, it is not these pangs but various states and forms of confusion that occur, and these are not least significant as uneasiness. All of these states of uneasiness or suffering conclude the equivalence of conscience realities at far higher levels, and consequently, the increase in essence knowledge and convergence of mankind towards the destined plans of duty. Therefore, man needs to reach the higher realities, by trying to get over the confusions following the digested, fully functioned realities of the level he exists in, as soon as possible, so that acquired merits can start to function timely and consequently, the normal progress of the essence knowledge on the path of development can continue without cessation. So, when a man encounters any uneasiness or confusion or pangs, and when his conscience starts to burn with the sparks of any pangs, that man needs immediately to pull himself together, and have his comprehension browse among the components of his conscience, to orientate to the higher component of his conscience, which he has neglected so far, to start sending values to it through his wishes, and on the other hand, to put his wishes, habits, desires, belonging to the lower reality in the background, and not to feed them with values, and above all, to make the very necessary efforts to do this. As he does this, conscience equilibrium begins to be set gradually at higher levels. And when this happens, the joy of much greater ease and happiness to be born will sweep away all troubles and hardships of the past. Nevertheless, their knowledge in the essence being, as a rich charge of development, converges man closer to the sublime plans of evolution, and the increase of ease in man is actually the result of this state. Mankind may think of questions like why this component of earthly cravings was necessary, or more correctly, would it not be possible to attain higher realities, and to increase the essence knowledge and consequently, to fulfill the preparation for duty, without the distinct duality of earthly cravings in human life? Answers to these questions have already been given in previous knowledge. Let us make them clear here. We have said that, knowledge to be useful for the spirit's evolution has to become essence knowledge, that is, has to be the being's own property. And this is, as we have said, a quality that can be acquired only by the beings becoming molded by the events and making huge efforts. That is, the being will have some conclusions after the applications it will have through the body, by struggling with world events in regard to their positive and negative aspects, and these conclusions will provide essence knowledge. Actually, repeated embodiments of mankind are for them to encounter the infinite manifestations of events, both bitter and sweet. The reason for this is to increase essence knowledge. However, here another imperative emerges as well. If the factors aiming the possibilities and opportunities of struggling with the events, and getting molded by them do not exist, there would be no need for emergence of such demanding and effort-activating events. And if mankind could be made to advance on the evolutionary path with undeserved processes, then they could be imprisoned and dragged uncomprehendingly. However, the knowledge we previously gave indicates that such an evolutionary process cannot be possible. 4. Such kinds of advancements which works like a complete machine, irrelevant to the comprehension and freedom of beings, can only be subject to the principle of mechanical evolution, as we have previously explained, which has passed, within the dark and infinitely long imprisonment at the initial stage of universe, when beings were yet devoid of comprehension and power. And the greatest result evolution under this principle provides for the beings, again as we explained, cannot go beyond the hydrogen atom's state of merit, which has not yet had comprehension, and gained the powers to free themselves from imprisonment, and has been merely forced to adapt to mechanical motions. When the beings are put into events they have not deserved, they cannot gain benefits that are worthy for the stage of humanity. For, in this case, at the manifestation of those events, of which they cannot designate and appreciate the causes and effects, it will be impossible for them to be able to enter their knowledge of comprehension, and when there is no knowledge of comprehension, essence knowledge cannot be, and the evolution expected from humanity cannot be realized. Whatever the events may be, when their causes and effects are unknown to mankind, they remain vain and purposeless. Only the conclusions arrived at coming out victorious or defeated, after being molded among the deserved bitter and sweet events, by the help of the knowledge of comparison on the face of the causality principle, can put into effect essence knowledge, which is the evolutionary factor. Therefore, mankind needs to be entitled to events, which are regulated to their evolutionary needs, so, by comprehending this entitlement, they can find the knowledge of comparison which will take them to the conclusion, while they struggle with those events, and they can attain the possibility of making an accounting of these. A child beaten, if he does not know the reason for this beating, cannot properly benefit from it. And when he cannot benefit from it, since he does not appreciate the degree of the situation, he cannot make efforts to improve his behaviors. In order for him to benefit from this beating, his comprehension needs to be awakened, for this, he needs to be informed about why, and because of which weak sides of him he deserved this beating. And this can be possible by activating his weak sides that lie in wait and making these obvious. Moreover, this effort mechanism has a role in the application of the plan of fate, which we will explain later. This knowledge explains why some earthly craving parts, which will bring about some hard and harsh consequences, stand against the duty components, and why the beings in duty cause such situations. So, the mechanism of the duty, earthly craving struggle is needed. And because of this, the earthly craving is a valuable factor on the path of development. In the developmental mechanism, the earthly craving standing against the duty component is not vain and unnecessary. The earthly craving is a perfect and fundamental vehicle, set in place for leading man to the knowledge of comparison, as we just have said, by whipping up the efforts with its whole and parts. Evolutionary mechanism will gain its ever-increasing speed across lives, from the apparently negative powers of the components of earthly cravings. If the wood to be cut were not resistant, there would be no need to use an axe. The earthly craving is like the resistance of the axe. And the axe symbolizes the efforts belonging to the struggles to be done, for overcoming this earthly craving. Therefore, if the earthly craving does not exist, there is no need for struggles and efforts. And when it happens, unmerited evolutions are expected to come one day, spontaneously, and as we have just explained, such a thing is impossible. Therefore, the earthly craving must exist so the efforts to be able to pass to higher components may find the field of realization. These efforts are fundamental processes that allow knowledge of further stages, and their becoming the property of the essence being. Now, we will provide knowledge pertaining to these earthly craving parts, and the state of a man who bustles and endeavors within the struggle of preparation for duty, in comparison with the realm he lives in as an individual. Man is a whole of combinations constituted with matter parts assigned to the being, which is the vehicle and expression of a spirit's evolution in universe. Therefore, the body is a vehicle assigned to service in the world for a being, which can use it according to its developmental imperatives. The being influences the world matter through the body, which is under its governance and at its service, by utilizing its crude material state. These events occur, in accordance with the superficial time reality to which the body is subject. On the other hand, influences coming from matter are reflected to the spirit via the channel of the being, by gaining in value from spherical time comprehension. In this way, the evolutionary needs of the spirit are fulfilled. The being uses the body for its test and trials, experiences, observations, in short, for all its needs which are the necessities of its plan, and millions of assisting influences arrive at this body from outside, and of course, only via the channel of that being. These influences may come, as from the very high, from plans at various levels and stages of evolution as well, in order to put into effect results at various levels of intensity and power. All of these influences, descending to the body in order to fulfill the necessities of the delineated plan of destiny, belonging to the being's bodily life in the world are always under the control and supervision of higher plans. Therefore, none of these influences, from the smallest to the greatest, is in vain and unnecessary. Each of these displays states pertaining to the conscience mechanism that we previously talked about, and is regulated in the organism. This regulation occurs in harmony with the necessities and imperatives of the being's plan for the world.